on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Got some awesome news to talk about here. We've got a CDC update that's pretty cool. We've got some really powerful news from the ODNI and Ratcliffe and why this is happening the way it is. There's been some talk about it. The Democrats are certainly up in arms. I think there's a solid reason why they're doing it. Also got some interesting news around polls, believe it or not. Now, again, I hate polls, always will, don't really trust them, but everybody talks about them. I'm going to talk about them, but there's some very interesting news around that. Also have some positives playing out around Portland, and also kind of tied to something similar, but something going on in Florida too, where a lot of people are starting to get a little antsy right now. A lot of people are starting to step up to the plate and show what side of the fence they stand on. And this is becoming a little more difficult for a lot of these Antifa members. And on top of that, a number of leaders are starting to call them out. And a lot of people are getting very upset and starting recall requests. I believe Ted Wheeler is one on that list. They are literally, both sides are working to recall him because he has been such a failed and miserable mayor. So again, a lot of people, these mayors, they're blaming Trump. It's real easy to point fingers, but ultimately Trump said, hey, do you want any help? And he says, no. And then he continues to make mismanagement decisions. Can't really blame Trump. Trump's willing to help. He's just not been asked to help. So again, I think Wheeler's in a bad place and probably going to end up out of office. One of my favorite parts of Martin Luther King's quote, and this is going to kind of lead us into the actual video, but I thought it was extremely germane. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. These words have not been as far from where we are right now as possible. So many people on this side that are trying to fight for this movement seem to be more concerned about the color of the skin rather than the content of their character. We've got people causing harm, people causing damage. And we've had a number of people stand up and step up and say, look, damage is not okay. That doesn't work towards the civil rights movement. It doesn't help anybody's point. In fact, it does the opposite. And they talk about what all of these wonderful protesters, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lennon, all of these wonderful people talked about: peaceful, nonviolence, being a stand-up individual to demonstrate what it is you want. If you want people to believe in you, you've got to step up to the plate and give them a reason to believe in you. And I found one other picture. This goes back a little ways, and I swear we're going to get into everything, but this, I think, is interesting. When you look at this came out. These people all got suspicious packages addressed to them, and I think this was a while ago. I think this went back to probably either close to when George Bush, the funeral was, or there was an anthrax thing way back in the past. And I'm not saying it's cool, and I'm not saying it's okay. But what is interesting is if you look at the specific people that got packages. And again, I don't remember what this was in relation to. I was looking for images for something else. But Obama, Clinton, Brennan, Holder, Maxine Waters, George Soros, Biden, and Robert De Niro, easily the most outspoken Hollywood person on the left. I just thought it was really weird that these were the people that were hopping in. Anyway, good news about COVID, folks. Now, again, it's all about how we look at numbers, how we slice and dice, but it's still good news in my opinion. Right now, CDC is saying that of all the deaths, 180,000 deaths or whatever the heck the number's up to now, 94% of those are actually underlying conditions were other things. Now, I'll show you what other things were, but only 6% of those deaths, only 6% of that 180,000 were actually just like COVID only, or COVID got them. Now, what does that mean? Well, what does it mean? I don't know. They've been hyping COVID a lot, talking about how horribly dangerous it is. It's not. Coupled with other things, it tends to become remarkably more dangerous. So again, of 180,000, 6%, what, 1% would be, what, 1,800? So what, 10,000. 10,000 people were probably just COVID-oriented. 6%. That's quick math. Sorry, it's probably not even accurate. But again, there's a lot of different kinds of things they list. I thought they listed them down here. But you've got like pneumonia. You've got, any number of other illnesses that would happen. And so people that had these different problems but died from COVID, a lot of times they were considered a COVID death, when in reality, apparently these numbers are a little fudgy. Something that's interesting, I think, and I think this is going to play a large role, one, with Trump, because I think more lawsuits are going to come. But what happens, and the way this is spelling out, Sarah Palin's defamation lawsuit against the New York Times is going to trial. Now, what's interesting is apparently the evidence that was provided by Palin's attorneys show Bennett came up with an angle for his editorial. He had an angle that he was going. He was trying to prove a point about Sarah Palin, right? And for those of you that didn't know, Sarah Palin ran with John McCain as the first female vice president candidate, by the way, not just in case anyone thinks Kamala Harris is the first. No, this lovely lady was. But that being said, he was coming up with his angle for his editorial. He ignored the articles that the attorneys brought to his attention that were inconsistent with this angle he had. He disregarded the results of the research he commissioned, and he ultimately made the point he set out to make in reckless disregard for the truth. So let me restate that. He had an angle that he wanted to prove. He wanted to prove somehow that she was a certain thing. Her lawyers provided articles that said, hey, here's stuff that shows the opposite. He's like, bah, I don't care about it. I'm going to do some research to prove my point. Does some research, gets the research back. Doesn't really show what he wants to prove. Okay, cast that aside, and went down this path that actually defamed her, Sarah Palin. And so in so doing, looks like is possibly malicious. So the courts are going to allow that to move forward. Now, when you think about all of the stories that have been done around Trump, all of the false accusations that have been done about Trump that have made Trump look bad. I mean, he makes himself look bad all on his own, plenty easy. But I'm talking about all these things where he was using White House funds to buy like the lavish stuff in his Trump towers and just all sorts of things that they have accused him of when there was proof to suggest other than that. So it'll be very interesting to see if future lawsuits follow, certainly from the Trump side. But yeah, Sarah Palin's getting her chance to do a little defamation action against the New York Times. Once again, New York Times stepping up to the plate, just being sleazy. So polls, love them, right? So polling firm Rasmussen warns about national poll suppression. What does that mean? Do you ask? Let me show you. It's very interesting. So apparently, it seems as CBS and YouGov has decided not to update their battleground tracker this week. The last few weeks, it was done at 10:30 a.m. I have exactly one guess as to why. And so what they're noticing is all of these polls, actually, I guess use that one. All these polls don't seem to have anything after 8:25. Now, as of 8:25, Biden's numbers were already starting to go down. The Republican National Convention, I think, happened already. 25th. Oh, that was Tuesday. So yeah, that hadn't even happened yet. So we barely had the convention. We barely had the violence after the convention, and Kenosha hadn't happened yet. So today is the 31st. Since the 25th, a whole lot of really, really, really bad stuff for the left has come out. Stuff that's bad for Biden. In fact, today, just, a couple, 3 hours ago, Biden was doing this announcement, and he was basically telling everybody that any sort of burning and looting and all these things are not considered protest, that those are considered violence. And I was like, wow, finally. It only took him, 90 days of the violence for him to finally come out and say, don't do it. So again, Biden's even finally come out because the numbers are so bad. They're not even sharing the numbers. A thing that updates polls daily is not updated for days. So again, obviously they're not happy with what they're seeing. And again, I don't even believe polls anyway. And they know they're made up numbers. And even with their made up numbers, they still look so bad that if they came out and told people, oh my God, Biden's down 20 points after 1 week, it would be done for Biden, which it is already. But so they're trying to keep this stuff on the down low. They don't want people to know what's really going on. The silent majority is speaking. Here's evidence. Here's evidence for you. I think there's one other picture in here which is just talking. Yeah, it's nothing important. So good stuff coming there. We'll see how this plays out. Now, this is fascinating to me, I think. So obviously people are talking about this ODNI. John Ratcliffe notified Congress that the intelligence community will be scaling back in-person congressional briefings on election security and replacing them with written updates ahead of November. Just right there, just that one paragraph. I think a lot of people would be like, okay, so what? Big whoop. Maybe he doesn't want to be in person to get the COVID, which of course that's not it. Maybe he doesn't want to, I don't know, like why does it matter? Why does it matter if he says it in person or if he says it versus writing it? And the reason is I think in these places where they're talking about it, where they're doing these meetings, maybe either A, certain people are being invited, B, people are recording stuff and then sharing it. But long story short, information is being leaked from these verbal meetings. Somehow, and they're probably reasonably sure where the leaks are happening, but somehow these verbal meetings are being leaked. So what Ratcliffe decided is, I'm going to put it in writing in a intelligence memo, which now makes it top secret, which now means if anybody shares that with the press, that is a major no-no. That is a guarantee you're in trouble for sure. So this is, again, not checkmate, but, well, I don't know. It might very well be checkmate on the last of the leaking because there's nothing else they can do. Think about who's making the noise and who really doesn't care. And then you think about, he's just putting stuff in writing. That's all this is. Yeah, but that is causing a huge problem for the Democrats. So again, they're painting this as the worst thing. Trump's horrible. He's horrible. Ratcliffe's horrible. Blah, blah, blah. Long story short, the left is leaking all over the place. They're taking information, running with it, and changing it, making it mean whatever they want, whatever. A lot of crazy stuff's happening. And frankly, Ratcliffe is tired of stuff being misrepresented. If you're going to at least leak information, don't misleak it. Don't make it fake. Don't, So again, and I'm sure, I'm sure that's not what Ratcliffe wants. I'm sure he's like, hey, if you're going to leak it, at least do it right. No, you're not allowed to leak, period. But again, they're getting to the bottom of things, and it's very interesting how this is playing out and who is getting angry. Now, one thing that's awful cool, and I don't know, I've heard a couple different stories of how this guy got identified, but the Portland shooter, the guy that walked up with to the dude that had the blue line thing, right? Just walked up, and there's a couple images of it. I'm not going to play the video again, but so he calls himself 100% Antifa. And interestingly, there was two places I've seen information stating, one that 4chan was where he was called out. Someone identified who he was. And then I've also read that it was his sister. So maybe his sister on 4chan recognized him and said, oh my God, that's my brother. Long story short, they know who this dude is. And he'd been arrested back on July 5th. And this is kind of an interesting story. He was arrested for having a weapon. Let's see, launching fireworks projectiles. He got busted for having a weapon on him and resisting arrest. And here it was. Broadway, where the male fought with the officers. Officers were able to get him into custody and recovered an illegally possessed loaded firearm and a knife. He was supposed to stand trial, never did. They dropped the case, whatever. No one showed up, whatever, because of COVID. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Whatever the case is, this guy ends up back out on the street. Apparently probably gets another weapon, or they just gave it back to him. I don't even know how that played out. But then, immediately 2 months later, a month and a half later, he's out again on the street and shoots an individual and kills him dead on the street. And again, like I said, he's been called out by his family. So this is the guy. We all know who he is now. He's gotten himself. Yeah, that's the shooting. I just don't want to play it again. But he just walks up to the dude. It's so horrible. And this is, again, the photos of when he got arrested back in the past and him bragging on Instagram. I don't know if that's a gun wound or what. He talks about being in the Army and he hated it. I did not feel like fighting for them would ever be a good cause. Today's protesters and Antifa are my brothers in arms. This is a cause to fight for the truly is fighting for my country. So this guy actually thinks he's fighting for his country, walking around shooting people that are about as patriotic as you actually get. Because this guy's an Antifa guy. This guy's anti-fascist, though oddly, his behavior is 100% fascist, which is funny. It's kind of opposite of what his name is, 100% Antifa, when in reality it should be 100% FA, right? 100% fascist. Anywho, this guy's going down. They're looking for him still. But they know who he is, and he's got a major rap sheet. He's toast. So eventually, just time is going to catch him. That's how it's going to work out. Now, it's kind of interesting. Pro-Trump protesters are, quote, spoiling for a fight in Portland, says Biden. So obviously they don't like anybody that kind of is pro-Trump and is maybe pro, democracy and maybe anti-Antifa, which is weirder too still, right? Anti-Antifa. But that's what we're becoming, right? We're now the new anti-Antifa. And that's kind of cool. We should get t-shirts made. I want to see those come out. But anywho, there's some proud patriots, as you might be able to see, that are not afraid to cause a little ruckus. Now, these guys are doing behaviors that aren't very cool, but they're shooting paint bullets, which is not okay. I guess they're spraying urine on people, which is not cool. People are throwing stuff at them. But again, this is what happens when you start to get lawlessness, when you just allow lawlessness to occur. Portland, it seems that people are kind of attempting to face each other onto the streets. Crazy. Again, this kind of stuff's not good. This just leads to more and more chaos. It's kind of what some of the black leaders that are coming out and actually saying the violence isn't good. This isn't towards our cause. And again, this is the stuff that happens. Violence begets violence. Violent protest begets violent response. Violence doesn't work. Violence does not benefit people the way they want it to. And some of the other problems that are starting to happen. There's a story out in Tallahassee right now. Police rule a man who pulled a pistol in a viral protest confrontation lawfully defended himself. Now, again, most people that are legally carrying really do understand the legalities of what happens when you pull a firearm. What are the legalities around legally carrying one, where you're at, what state, what city. There's a lot of factors that go into play. Now, people that are out illegally doing things, they don't care about the laws. These are the people where, everyone talks about, well, if we had more gun restrictions or more gun laws, then this stuff wouldn't happen. No, that's actually the opposite. The people that follow gun laws are not the ones that are out committing crime. The people that follow gun laws are the ones that are using it to defend themselves or just believe in the Second Amendment because we've got a lot of questionable government officials out there. But whatever the case is, stuff is starting to be taken into people's own hands. Now, this doesn't really have any volume, so I could probably borderline get away with playing it. But, you can't really see it. Something happens. The guy pulls a gun. Then there's a ruckus. I don't know. I don't even know what the right word is. I think a tuckus is a funny word. But that being said, they try to knock him down. Cops get involved. It basically clears out. All these people start running away. They're like, oh, no, get away. It's dangerous. And they get their hands up. It's ridiculous. It was over and done before anything happened. Nobody got shot, but the guy didn't get in trouble because he was defending himself. Again, people are Antifa, these left-leaning people, these peaceful protesters are attacking people. Not okay. That is against the law. Period. I don't care if you're morally right on this argument that you've got going on in your mind. You are not allowed to attack people. Period. You're not allowed. It's against the law. I have just as much rights to freedom as you, but you're not allowed to infringe upon that. Not good at all. So something that's also very telling, and I think a lot of people are starting to see it, and frankly, this is here in my wonderful state, California, do it now. So apparently, we've had this, and I've talked about this a little bit. There's a church that basically was the court. It's gone to court like 3 times for whether or not they can open up the church and have services inside. They're able to socially distance and all that stuff. And LA was like, no, we're not letting you. No. And it kept going back to the courts, and the court said, yes, that's okay. You guys are going against their First Amendment rights. No, you can't do that. Not okay. So then finally that final thing says, yeah, okay, the church can open. So then what happens? Los Angeles County is now retaliating against the Grace Community Church for simply exercising their constitutionally protected right to hold church and challenging an unreasonable, unlawful health order. So now the county is going after it. The city already lost 3 attempts. And now the county is jumping on board. Do you think people are going to remember this kind of stuff when they finally vote again this coming election? I'm pretty sure they're going to. There's been a lot of messed up stuff. People on the left go to church too. See what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff that they're even messing with their own people. And I think that's also one of the funniest parts about how the left works. They will devour their own. They don't care. And they are just a monster mouth that just, like a Pac-Man, just eating everything. It is out of control. So we'll see where the county court case goes, but I'm sure we're going to hear more about it. And again, I hope there's a way where someone can literally walk in and slap people's hands or something and be like, why do you keep doing this? That's not okay. No, stop it. So anyway, to cover a couple little interesting international stories that I think are interesting, this one especially. So the U.S. put sanctions, and this is the executive branch that did. I had to dig into it a little bit to figure it out, and I see it was the U.S. Commerce Department imposed sanctions on Russia's 48th Central Research Institute. Now, let me try to explain all this real quick. I'll take a step back and say, why is that group involved? Well, they've supposedly got a vaccine that's out recently. And then what we did is we basically said, yeah, you're bad, you're horrible. And then we put imposed sanctions on the company that's creating the vaccine. Kind of like, we don't want you to have anything to do with it. We don't want anyone to buy it from you. Now, the State Department, Commerce Department's reasoning for doing this is that the Russia's 48th Central Research Institute has been involved in making biological and chemical weapons in the past or currently, who knows. Now, of course, the 48th Central Research Group says, no, that's not true. We're just making vaccines nowadays. And so I doubt there's truth in that. But to me, it does seem like a very strong statement to impose sanctions on someone trying to make a vaccine for something that's scaring the crap out of most everybody. And if that vaccine works, then why would we be against it? Again, I'm putting this question onto you guys. I think this is weird. So our executive branch is blocking this thing because we think their manufacturer is a chemical biological manufacturer. It almost makes you wonder what's going to be in that version of the vaccine, maybe? I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know what the reason is, but certainly interesting news article. And this just, I guess, caught my attention because it's one more country that is basically mad at China. Everybody is mad at China right now. There is an alliance between Japan, the Philippines, I think Korea, and Australia and us. And we're floating around the South China Sea trying to cause some little pandemonium out there. We've got the Czechs that are pissed at them, the Indians that are pissed at them. There was an old article I saw where they were trying to make it sound like China was going to be able to take down the United States, but they were referencing the S-400 missile deal that Russia basically canceled with China and in fact is speeding up with India. So Russia's giving India a whole bunch of those S-400 missiles, but not China. So yeah, China is not feeling love from anybody right now and pretty much feeling all sorts of hate. So a lot is going on, folks. The silent masses are waking. The silent masses are speaking. People are getting sick and tired of this weird behavior that we're seeing from our government that is truly overstepping their bounds. And I think a lot of this angst and upset feelings out in the streets is also being caused by this lockdown that's just never ending. People are social creatures. We don't like to be locked down. It's not working. This is causing more problems. And like they frequently said, the cure can't be worse than the sickness. And it seems in just about every way we've been able to look at this, the cure seems oddly significantly worse than the actual sickness, especially when only 6% are really just COVID and a lot of these other cases, and certainly with high risk populations and whatnot, that these people have all sorts of things going on with them. And yeah, COVID might have been the final kicker, or maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe the pneumonia and the diabetes would have been sufficient. But again, a lot of things are happening. People are very aware of what's going on. And certainly politicians saying stuff today that they already have recordings of them saying 10 years ago different These things are coming back and haunting the left in ways that have never, ever been able to haunt them before. They don't control the narrative anymore. We do. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan Radio Style.